Great. Hey, Isla Reddin, thank you so much for this conversation. Okay, parents listening, any parent who is a mom, particularly a single mom, who wants to learn about raising their boys, you got to listen to this conversation. So I met Isla, I don't know, a couple months ago, and turns out that she's done a ton of work in education and has done a ton of research around moms raising boys. And so I said, let me record this conversation because not only is this useful for me and my work with families, but it's going to be useful for whomever happens to see it. So Isla, thank you and welcome to Education Explained, a channel that's really aiming at single parents. So before I started the recording, you were about to tell me about how you came to this place of having this kind of expertise in boys and moms with boys. Could you kind of back up and share that again?
Sure.
Thank you.
It is my area of absolute passion.
Awesome.
So I am a mother of two boys, no girls, but I was the oldest of three girls and no boys. So these two boys come into my life and I have absolutely no expertise and no experience, and I don't know what on earth I'm doing. So I'm like 101 every day for years and years and years. I'm at 101. When the kids became teenagers, I had already at that point been very engaged in the school system in understanding, my understanding, just by being a volunteer parent in the classroom, my understanding that we were not reaching, by any stretch of the imagination, we're not reaching every child, but we were especially not reaching our boys. And what I wanted to do was be able to change that. And my goal was, how am I going to change education in the United States? This is the kid from Northern Ireland who thought that she could just make all of these changes. And obviously was a little larger than...
I was going to say, how'd that go? Education hasn't changed much.
I'm still here and we don't have the changes that I was looking for 20 years ago.
It's coming.
It's coming, and there's more and more people that are committed to it.
No doubt.
But what I knew was that we had to engage kids, and especially our boys, in more right brain, more kinesthetic, more ways of engaging their whole body in their learning. Because by doing that, we were going to be able to meet them where they were or where they are, and we were going to engage them. So everything that I learned when I started putting together my program was about engagement. How do you engage young people in their own world? How do you make things interesting? How do you make them constructive? How do you make them not about, it's Tuesday, page 15, the biology textbook?
Right. Real quick. Catch our viewers up on the story you shared with me about your history in education and how you were one of the early leaders in project-based learning, and then you tried to introduce it into schools, and what happened? Can you restate that story?
Yes. So we're going back 20 years, and absolutely we were the very infancy of project-based learning. But because
sorry, for the parents listening, project-based learning is the idea is that each project becomes its own learning process. So you're going to learn about science, not by reading a textbook, but by doing a project and then extracting the science from that. Does that sound like a good description?
Yes. However, in a project or problem-based learning environment, you've got a problem that you're trying to solve, and maybe it has a science component to it, but it also has math, English, history, social studies. There's no problem, a real world problem comes with one topic. It is multifaceted. So what you're doing is you're helping kids understand how everything is connected. It's real world.
That's right. Okay. So wanted to make sure parents understood what PBL was, project-based learning. Continue, please.
Right. So I thought when I first started this, I thought all I needed to do was to train teachers to be able to deliver in this kind of more facilitation model as opposed to front of the room lecture. What I didn't realize was we actually had to write every single lesson plan. We had to be telling teachers how to actually teach it. We had to have the words, we had to have the script.
Oh, so you're essentially saying in order to make it work in the US system, you had to write down every word. You essentially had to it was spoon feeding the teachers.
Mm-hmm. They loved the idea, not all of them, of course, but those who engaged with us, they loved the idea, but they could not make the transition between front of the classroom being the
expert, sage on the stage,
expert, to a model of delivery where it's more just in time learning. It's relevant to what the problem is. And you have to be able to meet the kids very much where they are and teach them and facilitate there. So teachers they had no experience of how to do that.
Yeah, well, they're coming from a completely, especially 20 years ago, completely different mindset around what education in school really was. But you also, PBL, you had proven repeatedly, you mentioned the University of California at Irvine.
Yes, so we teamed with the University of California at Irvine in order to do all of the research. And so we had an agreement with the school district that the school district would give our researchers at UCI the data, the scoring for each classroom that was engaged. So classrooms that were doing our PBL model versus classrooms that were just traditional learning. And we were able to compare it all. And every single result was statistically significant. So we then took our data to the Board of Education at the state of California to say, look at what we've got.
Yeah,
this is
works.
The 10th largest school district in California. Look at the evidence. And the answer was, sorry, we're not interested. It's still the biology. It's page 14 for 10th grade. And that's it.
Yeah. So again, parents, so when you hear this is one of the recurring themes that you're going to hear about on this channel, which is it's the system that is generally the problem. The system requires a level of standardization that doesn't work for the vast majority of kids. And now, Isla, we're going to talk a little bit more about how that transitioned into boys specifically, right? You have these PBL experience, PBL training, you've got a couple boys at home, you're realizing that many boys in educational circles are disengaged horribly. Tell me what happened then.
So my sons, when they became teenagers, we all know as parents, there is a developmental trajectory that takes place in adolescence that none of us are prepared for as parents. And the reality is no child is prepared for it either.
Oh no.
And so we have the blind leading the blind, trying to figure all of this out between ages of 11, 12, and 16 or 17 or 18, depending on the child and the experience. So for my children, especially my younger son, both of them were bullied in middle school, and both of them created their own strategies for dealing with it. But my younger son, I worried very, very much about, because he was a very sensitive child, is a very, very sensitive child. And he really struggled to find his space, his place in middle school and then in high school. And so it was my fear of his future and what he was going through mentally and emotionally that became the fuel that ultimately led me to all of the courses that I've done in adolescent development, in understanding kind of the brain, the body, the whole neuroscience, and then also understanding the difference between men and women, the difference therefore between kind of boys and girls, and how we can communicate when we really understand we are so incredibly different. We stop looking for similarities and we really start focusing on our differences. And in our differences, we find those aspects of ourselves that are magic. And that's what we need to do for our moms and for our sons.
Yes. So a couple things that triggered for me as you were talking. One is the amount of bullying. Well, actually, maybe back up. The number of kids that are kind of misfit, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you think about a standard curve, most kids are actually going to be misfits. Most kids are not going to be, you know, quote unquote normal, or a significant number will not be quote unquote normal. I don't even know what that means, by the way.
Yeah.
But for those kids that are misfit, of which I was one, and most of the people I talk to have at least one or two in the kid in their family or themselves, right?
Right.
They then are left to, as you said, figure out how to survive, right? They're not thinking about thriving. They're trying to survive their educational experience. And then you top on that to, a mom who might not have any understanding about some of these differences that, you know, help me understand this. What do you think are the reasons? I mean, I've heard a lot about how we shouldn't be talking about boys are different than girls, and that you know, they're kids and that we should just treat them all the same. I've heard that a lot. Where's that coming from?
I think that's a really, really good question, to be honest with you, because there's this politically correct piece
Yeah.
that says that everybody has equal capacity, right? So it's sort of like, what do you call equality? Would be my question, because most boys are physically much stronger than girls, so we cannot call that. We can call that equality, because equality is not, it's not being equal in terms of the amount of strength, it's being equal in terms of the capacity for brain or
their value to society, value to the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that we have completely fallen foul of this politically correct aspect of everybody's got to be treated the same. And the reality is that boys and girls are so fundamentally different. And I follow two particular researchers. One is Alison Armstrong, who's done tremendous amount of work in relationships and helping to really understand the difference between men and women, boys and girls. Okay. And the other one is Dan Siegel and his work with the adolescent brain, with neuroscience, etc. And looking at both of those experts, what you start to understand, it puts together a picture of, we are all genius in our own way, but we cannot be, you can't put us on the same diet and expect the same results.
Exactly. So let me pause you. I just got done reading a book that talked about this very thing. And parents, I want you to really, really hear this. Single parents, parents with, you know, two parents in the home, boys or girls, this idea that kids are not equal has gotten somehow corrupted into thinking that that's a bad thing. Every kid is a genius in something. But when we talk about ability, we usually say every kid has to be the same or the same level of ability in this one narrow band. But there are so many different expressions that a person can have and use, and so many different contributions that a person can make. We can't keep saying that every kid is the same. They're not. Their abilities are different. The question is, can we find those abilities and can we nurture them and grow them? That's the question. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was one of the things that back probably 15 years ago, I found so fascinating. So one of my use cases, so to speak, was an elementary school in Southern California. And I got a grant to train all of their teachers in understanding the different learning styles. So in understanding kind of visual, auditory, kinesthetic, how to teach, how to create lesson plans that reached every child using all of these different modalities, etc. And what was so fascinating and it had left brain, right brain, all of these different aspects of how we process information, how we learn, etc. What was fascinating was every single teacher who took the psychometric and the questionnaire, not everyone, but most of them came out dominantly right brain, not dominantly left brain. And every single one of them thought they were dominantly left brain, which is the aspect of teaching that you go step by step by step, and you literally are building block after block after block. But somebody like me, if you don't tell me where I'm going and why, I cannot possibly deal with this step-by-step thing. Yes. I'm completely lost. It doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, let me pause you there, right? So parents listening, I want to, this last point you made around project base and project management and knowing the destination and then kind of working backwards from that, is that, well, first off, I'm right there with you. If you tell me to hammer this nail into this piece of wood, I'm going to say, why? What are we doing? Like, where are we going with this thing, right? And if they told me we're going to build a house, I get it, right? So is that something that's unique to individuals, or is it more predominant in boys or girls, or is there enough information, or we just know that kids are wired differently in that way? How does that look like?
We know that every child is as unique as their thumbprint.
Got it.
And although we have buckets, if you like, that we can put different modalities in, or different ways of being in the world, different ways of learning, different ways of processing information. There are big buckets for that, but there's so many nuances inside those buckets.
Right.
And the goal of the parent is to understand their child well enough, and to have the child understand themselves well enough that they can work with those nuances as strengths, as opposed to having them be weaknesses. That the child feels, I'm not good enough, and therefore I have to compensate for what is truly me, when that is not necessary at all, except potentially in our education system.
Right. Oh my gosh. So I just wrote that down, and that is, again, one of these statements, parents, I hope you take it and you like pray on this, you write it down, you put it on your posters in your bedroom, whatever. But she said the goal of the parent is to understand the child well enough, and to help the child understand themselves well enough for them to know that their differences are actually strengths, not weaknesses. But the system that your children are oftentimes in will message to the child every single day that you have all these weaknesses, and you're actually not measuring up as a result, if you don't fit into the narrow band of educational success that we have currently. That is a dramatically important statement that Isla just made. And I want everybody to really hear that and to lean into that, the reality of that. Thank you for this. That was very good. Every child is as unique as their thumbprint. And then these two researchers, I'll put links to their information in the notes below the video. So back to you, Isla. So back to boys. So then what should a parent be thinking about? What, like, in addition to understanding their child, their boy or girl, but their boy in this conversation better, how would they do that? How would they start to understand their boy?
The first step, and the particular space that I want to focus on for myself and my work right now is, as I was saying to you, mothers and boys, because what we know beyond any shadow of doubt is every teenager needs to know that they're loved unconditionally. And it's very hard to love unconditionally a child who is behaving in a way in which the parent really doesn't like that behavior. So, yes, we have a reality that's out there, but my view and my prayer really is that by giving mothers an understanding and a kind of an education into what's actually going on in the brain development of the child that creates this need to have risky behavior, or this need to be with their peers, even if those peers are not appropriate, that this is part of the child becoming an adult. And just like the impala or on the savannah needs to go and look in the eye of the lion to be able to see what the enemy is, where we have to understand that our kids, in order to be adults, to be able to create relationships that are good, to be able to be a member of the tribe, there are behaviors that they absolutely have to go through. And we have to understand them so that we can then not just kind of honor the fact that it's happening, but help the child be able to do this exploration and have it not be so risky that it ends in potential disaster.
So, okay. So then I get that. How do you work with again, you're a single mom. How do you work with a boy or mom generally? How do you work with a child who messages, you don't know what you're talking about, mom. I've got this, right? I can handle it, or I know what I'm doing. How would a mom work through that kind of dynamic, you think?
I think, it all at the end of the day comes down to communication. It all is about one of the core values that I have is respect. And it's something that, as I was growing up, was a problem inside my own home. And so with my kids, I really, really found it was incredibly important to me that they may not like each other, they may not like what's going on, but they respected each other. And they had to have respect for me as a person, as an individual, and I had to have respect for them. And I didn't do it all right, Matt. I mean,
of course,
be clear that I was as big a mess up
right.
And thank God my children survived it, and so did I. Right.
Right. Hey, let me just also say to parents, hey, that is another key takeaway. You're going to screw up. I screw up every single doggone day, but we keep working through it. We keep trying to get better. Right. So yeah, don't beat yourself up, parents.
No, because I mean, we all mess up, and we're human.
Yeah.
But the point, what I discovered was that the information that I have come across and been studying in the last 2 years, if it had been available to me when my kids were teenagers, I believe it would have changed everything for not just me, but for them, because we would have been able to sit down together and go, you feel like crap.
Yep.
It's understandable. This is what's happening in your body. This is what's happening in your brain. How do we help you feel less bad? How do we work with this? This is what's happening today. Tomorrow's going to be another day. It's about having enough understanding as a mother that you have confidence in your own parenting ability, in my view. So you don't go to bed every night worried sick about what might be or what might be going on with your child.
Wow.
And the reason I pick boys is only because I had boys.
Right.
And that's, I had to learn with them.
Well, and I think, again, I work with parents all the time, and I think most parents, what they want most of all is to have some confidence, to have some plan that they feel like, okay, I get it and I can do this. Yes. But most of the time, like you said, parents, I was there too. I still am there. I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know what to do. And so I do what I know. And oftentimes that is the very wrong thing. So as we think about boys, and again, I could talk to you about this for like hours and days. I don't think you have hours.
We'll have a future conversations.
Definitely. Let me ask one more question, maybe two more questions. The first one is, what resources might you suggest? You just mentioned Allison Armstrong and Dan Siegel. Those are some researchers. Are there other like books or any kind of resource that might come to mind? If not, we can maybe circle back.
Let's circle back on that as
okay, cool.
As I think about.
Cool. And then
I have honestly, Matt, I have a library here.
So you got to figure out which one.
Kind of raising boys, but I don't know that today I would say that all of this is necessarily relevant, because I believe also that one of the greatest resources that parents have is other parents. Yes. And creating community of parents that really, really can support each other, because I can't come up with a solution to a very, very specific problem that some mom is dealing with her son. But lately in community,
Right.
somebody else has had that experience and they're able to share. So
Right.
your biggest resource is definitely other parents and other moms.
Huge.
But
huge.
after that, I really fundamentally believe it's having these other pieces of the education model that nobody knows. I mean, we're beginning to get some of this, but it's not out there in the general public. We just don't know about it.
Right. Well, and again, 20 years ago, project-based learning was an unknown value. Today, I would argue that self-directed learning or self-engineered educational plans, I would argue that's a place that there's a lot of confusion or maybe just ignorance around what is likely to happen or what could happen if you trained your children on how to lead their own learning. I've seen it. And I'm passionate about it because it's just so amazing what I've seen. But most people don't know how to do it, that it's a thing. Right. Well, listen, let's do this. Let's kind of pause here. We will talk more again. And I want you to stay on the line because we're going to have a few more conversations after we close out. So thanks for being on Education Explained. Again, this is a website and a YouTube channel that's helping parents, specifically single parents, learn how to navigate their kids and create kids that love to learn for a lifetime. So thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, Isla, and as we conclude, I want parents to know how to get a hold of you if they've got questions. Would you be willing to kind of receive some questions?
Yeah, I would be thrilled to be able to help in whatever way I can.
So how do they get a hold of you?
So my email is my name, Isla, I-S like Sam, L-A .Reddin, R-E-D-D-I-N @gmail.com.
That I will have her information in the show notes below. Isla, again, thanks for being on Education Explained and looking forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you very much.
Hey, we're not done just getting started. So if you found this helpful, share it with the parent of your child's best friend, subscribe, and join me for a weekly live conversation where we're talking about educating kids in the 21st century. More information below. Take care. We'll see you there.